We have details from today's licensing authority meeting on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Monday, October 19th, 2015. I'm Sarah Mannel. The licensing authority finds Trader Ed's not guilty of a violation during a show cause hearing this morning. Lieutenant John Murphy says the establishment should have called the police after an incident earlier this year.
On August 30th, the Barnstable Police Department responded to Cape Cod Hospital around 11:30 for a complaint of a physical injury suffered by a complainant that alleged happened at Trader Ed's. The complainant is very well known to the Barnstable Police Department, although not known to the police officers that responded, but is very well known to me. He made some allegations about an assault that happened at Trader Ed's earlier in the night. The uniform officers responded. They met with staff from Trader Ed's who were cooperative, provided a video. The video depicted an altercation that happened inside the club in which the patron was escorted off the property, and that was the basic end of it. No one from Trader Ed's had alerted the police department nor called the police department about the problem inside the club. In a follow-up investigation, the complaint was brought forward regarding the failure to notify police.
Attorney Stephen Pizzuti says the restaurant acted appropriately by asking the inappropriate patron to leave.
The point I'm trying to make is, and you'll see the importance of it in a minute, is that protocol is probably one of the most important things to a successful police department. That's why the Barnstable Police Department is recognized as one of the best, because the officers follow protocol, they're instructed. It's something that's taught. It's not something that you just learn by osmosis. And that brings me to the issue of protocol. Since the first drink was poured by the first licensee in the town of Barnstable, whenever that was, I can think back to my earlier years when I could stay up past 11 unless the Patriots were playing. Those establishments, when unfortunately there was an unruly person, isn't it true, Lieutenant, that the protocol was to remove the individual that's unruly in a safe, expeditious, and professional manner? And if there was a problem, or if they felt that they couldn't do that effectively, then they would call the police. Hasn't then been basically the tradition since time immemorial?
And the board agreed with Pizzuti, ultimately voting to dismiss the complaint. Gold Market also went before the board, the licensing authority, this morning for allegedly selling alcohol to a minor. Consumer Affairs Officer Stephen Esty talked about the incident during the show cause hearing.
I'll read the facts of the case. On 8/27/2015, we had an underage drinking sting that we conducted with Lieutenant Murphy, Sergeant Cabral, Patrolman Scott Wright, and Patrolman Blondin and myself. We had a decoy which entered Gulf Supermarket, which is located at 55 Iano Road. She purchased a bottle of wine, exited the store with the wine, came to Sergeant Cabral and myself. Sergeant Cabral and myself entered the store, talked to the employee who sold it, got her information, retrieved the $20 that the girl used to buy, gave him back the change. I had conversation with the people there. When I did the show cause, when I served them, I also had further conversation with the owners, and they were very, as it turned out, it all worked out for the best. Everyone seemed to be, on the same page when it came to this underage drinking on that night.
Attorney David Lawler represented Gold Market during the hearing. He says the owner takes full responsibility for the underage sale and is making changes to ensure it doesn't happen again.
As I indicated in the beginning, we acknowledge that there was a violation. Beside me is Vinny D'Olimpio, who in various forms has held a license, I think for in excess of 22 years in the town, has never had a violation, is very well known and I think a pretty upright citizen of the town of Barnstable. And a mistake was made. Now, let me just explain Gall. It's a supermarket, and that they sell beer and wine, and she made a mistake. The issue, I think it's important for this board to know, it's what's happened since the mistake was made. Vinny, on his own, researched a new set of software, and this software requires that any time alcohol is scanned, the computer stops and requires the person to actually implement the birth date into the computer of the person buying the alcohol, which is a system to avoid a mistake again. Because in a supermarket, you know, you're running, you know, say 30 items through, bottle of wine comes through. It's, I'm not going to say it's easy to miss it, but it's certainly understandable how someone can, you know, just trying to be busy and they forget to ID. So if the wine's in the beginning, and then by the time they finish the other 20 items, they forget about it. And now, in this circumstance, it was just a bottle of wine. But they, this new software program, I think, is pretty ingenious, actually, because it really takes the guesswork out of the system, because you know, you either have to, if it's somebody who's in their 60s, you're obviously just going to ask their birthday and type it in. And if it's somebody who is younger looking, you're going to say, okay, maybe not maybe, I need to see an ID. So, and then the renewing, making sure everybody's tips trained, that's scheduled, I think, in another week. But there are, you know, already tips trained people there, but just renewing the efforts. And I think that in looking at this twofold, I think that based upon Mr. D'Olimpio's 22-year-old history, I think you have to look at the person and not just the act, and not treat, I know that there was a sting and there was 14 or 15 situations that if anything happens, that it be a suspension of any penalty and he'd be allowed to remain open. But if the board, in its discretion, I just want to keep in mind that if there is a penalty, that it be only for the sale of alcohol. This is, you know, beer represents less than 5% of the business of this establishment.
The licensing authority voted unanimously to shut down alcohol sales for 1 day. A 2-day suspension will also be held for 1 year in the event of any future violations. Town officials say fire and health code violations are to blame for the Thai House's shutdown. Health Inspector Donna Morandi talked about the violations during this morning's hearing.
Yes, on September 24th, there were food code violations, electrical and fire, and due to all these, we felt that it was necessary to close the facility. Do you want me to expand on the violations? There was the hood didn't seem to be in proper operation, and there was inoperable lighting in the hood system. There was electrical violations. There was grease inside and the exterior, so much that they had to, there was so much grease in the inside of the electrical panel that obviously grease is across the board, a health, fire, and electrical violations. The dishwasher was not working properly. They had nobody on site. There was Serve Safe Train, no allergen certificate. There were many flies, and they weren't properly logging their sanitizing for their dishwasher. And they were closed for 2 weeks, and that length of time was primarily due to hiring an electrician and getting all those problems related to that corrected.
The licensing authority found the Thai House guilty of health and fire violations and voted to suspend the establishment for a three-day period. They will hold those 3 days for a period of 1 year and will not need to be served unless there are any future violations. The Sandy Neck Board will meet tonight. That meeting will be held in the Town Hall hearing room at 7 o'clock. Well, be sure to tune in to our hour-long news program, Barnstable This Morning, weekdays at 7 a.m. On tomorrow's show, we will chat with Police Chief Paul McDonald. We'll talk with Director of Public Works Dan Santos. Plus, we'll have all the news and information you need. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Mannel.